Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for September 21st of 2023, and currently we have two slight risk regions, one for southern Oklahoma into northern Texas across the Red River, as well as a slight risk for Nebraska into northwestern Kansas. As for threats for today, we do have a 5% tornado threat for the slight risk region for Nebraska and Kansas, as well as a 2% tornado threat for the slight risk region for Oklahoma and Texas. But then if we take a look at our wind threat, we do have two different 15% wind threats for both slight risk regions. And as for hail, we do have a 15% hail threat for both slight risk regions. However, we do have a little bit more of a threat for large hail to possibly gorilla-sized hail across Nebraska and Kansas. So overall, for the main and primary threats for the slight risk region for Nebraska and Kansas, the 5% tornado, a 15% wind, and 15% hail would all be enough to trigger the slight risk region. So we don't have any more or less of a threat compared to the different threats. However, we do have a little bit more of a hail threat because of this hash region for large to very large hail and possibly gorilla hail. However, overall, we could definitely see the more of an equal threat for all of these for today across the slight risk region for Nebraska and Kansas. But then as for the primary threat for the slight risk for Oklahoma and Texas, we do have that 15% and that 15% wind and hail threat for the slight risk region, which will both be enough to trigger that slight risk region with a secondary threat of 1 or 2 brief tornadoes. Taking a look at the tropics, primarily focusing on a potential tropical cyclone 16 in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Florida. Currently, it is a potential tropical cyclone. It isn't a tropical storm yet. However, it is expected to become a tropical storm by 8 p.m. on Friday and continue as a tropical storm until 8 p.m. on Saturday. So we are expected to see a tropical storm develop from this region of development in the Atlantic. Currently, we are expected to have more tropical storm-like impacts. We aren't really expected to see hurricane-like impacts from this. This is going to be a little bit more of a lower-end threat compared to what we've had from Lee and Idalia. However, we should definitely see some tropical storm impacts from potential tropical cyclone 16. So currently our threats for this include the threat of I think 3 to 4 or 4 to 6 feet storm surge across North Carolina and Virginia, as well as a area of 1 to 3 foot storm surge around that for the areas of impact. But right in the areas of direct impact, we could see a little bit higher storm surge, as well as the threat for coastal flooding and flash flooding more inland, as well as, again, the threat for coastal flooding as well. As we could also see some damaging winds from this. I will definitely provide updates on this currently developing system. As of right now, it isn't expected to impact as a hurricane. However, we could still see impacts that are going to be more tropical storm-like, such as storm surge, damaging winds, flash flooding, and even a tornado threat. We do have a 5% tornado threat issued for this as of right now for our day 2 outlook. So do keep in mind that. And if you live in any of the coastal regions that are going to be affected by Tropical Storm 16 or potential Tropical Cyclone 16, definitely stay weather alert and watch for updates on this developing system. And I will continue to keep you posted. So stay tuned for that. And again, stay weather alert if you live in any of the areas that could potentially be impacted by potential Tropical Cyclone 16. Taking a look at our radar Omega model, starting off with our 500 millibars like we usually do, focusing on this low pressure system across the Pacific Northwest, you can see that we do have this band of stronger mid-level flow on the western and southern side of this low pressure system. This area of stronger mid-level flow is expected to enter the central United States plains and exit the Rockies by tomorrow and Sunday and lead to significant severe thunderstorms across the central plains. Currently, I won't really be covering that in today's forecast. However, I definitely will give you a little bit of information on that in today's forecast so you know what to look out for. We are going to see the threat of tornadoes, large hail and damaging winds across the central plains. And let's actually take a look at our current outlooks for these days. We do have a day 3 outlook. This would be on Sunday. We do have a very large slight risk region, which is most likely going to be upgraded to at least an enhanced risk by Sunday. So we could definitely see a significant impacts from this across the central plains. This was a day 5 outlook, so if they're able to forecast something that far out, then we are likely expected to have severe thunderstorms on that day. Again, we could see the threat of tornadoes, damaging winds, and large hail on Sunday for that slight risk region. But then let's take a look at our day 2 outlook. This is before the area of enhancement level flow can really work its way into the central plains. This may be a little bit too early for this area of enhancement level flow. However, we do have a slight risk region for our day 2 outlook for North Dakota or South Dakota and Nebraska, where we could also see the threat of tornadoes, maybe the possibility of damaging wind, maybe the possibility of large hail, and the threat of damaging winds. So do keep that in mind for Sunday and tomorrow. That those are going to be some notable events to watch out for. And again, definitely stay weather alert if you live in any of these areas that I just covered. So actually, I think the Sunday threat might be on Saturday. If today's Thursday, then then what we're currently looking at, this slight risk region for South Dakota and Nebraska, is going to be on Friday, and that slight risk region for a vast majority of the Central Plains, I think, should be on Saturday. Yeah, that should be on Saturday. So on Friday and Saturday, do keep this in mind if you live in any of the areas I just covered for significant severe thunderstorms. Again, I will definitely have a forecast out for these days whenever this does roll around. But however, these are some notable events to watch out for. And definitely stay weather alert and watch for updates on this developing system if you live in any of the affected areas. But then let's take a look at the weather for today. Let me switch back to our day 1 outlook so we can see our slight risk regions. Let's focus on the slight risk region for Nebraska and Kansas. So this is really before this area or this trough is really it hasn't really gotten to the Central Plains yet. However, we are expected to see some trough advection into the Central Plains across the Rocky Mountains. This is going to lead to orographic elongated hodographs and orographic lee troughing. We could see some lee troughing on the leeward side of these mountains, which will aid in severe thunderstorm development, as well as the threat of large to very large hail and possibly gorilla hail with our orographic elongated hodographs. How orographic elongated hodographs work is a lot of the lower level winds are blocked by the Rocky Mountains. However, the mid-level and upper level winds are still able to get across. So not only does that lead to a area of low pressure, which would be our lee troughing, but that also leads to elongated hodographs to support the threat of large to very large hail and possibly even gorilla hail on the leeward side of the mountains and the Central Plains. So we could definitely see the threat of large to very large hail across the Central Plains. But if you take a look at our isobars, we don't really have wind vectors. However, we can definitely interpret our wind vectors from our isobars. We do have a little bit of defluence here. It's not very noticeable, and it shouldn't really lead to too many impacts or too much of an increase for severe thunderstorms potential across this region, as overall the mid-level flow that is currently going to be triggering the severe thunderstorm or the slight risk region is going to be fairly weak. However, we do have a little bit of those spreading in the wind vectors in our isobars, which will definitely lead to some directional shear to support the threat of that 5% tornado threat and the threat of a few tornadoes for that 5% tornado threat across the slight risk region. And again, with orographic lee troughing and elongated hodographs, we could see the threat of large to very large hail across this region and the threat of damaging winds as well. But then let's take a look at the slight risk region for Oklahoma and Texas. You can see that this isn't really going to be all that much influenced by the trough advection across the Rockies. However, we do have the subtropical jet that is making its way out of the Pacific across the southern United States. And if we follow our isobars, you see that we do have a southerly dip across the southern Midwest. So we are expected to have some varying of the winds across this slight risk region to support the threat of 1 or 2 brief tornadoes across this region, as well as the threat of some small to medium hail. We could definitely see elongated hodographs from this subtropical jet, as well as the threat of damaging winds for the slight risk region as well. Taking a look at our dew points, let's focus on the slight risk region for Nebraska and Kansas and how this in a moisture plume across the Central Plains is going to affect our instability. Currently, we still have this strong southerly flow out of the Gulf of Mexico, which will lead to continuously building moisture across the Central Plains and building instability across the Central Plains as well with this building moisture. But then if we take a look at the slight risk region for Nebraska and Kansas, something that I did forget to note, actually, I just remembered this, we currently do have a tornado watch issued for this slight risk region. Conditions are favorable for tornadic development with that 5% tornado threat across the slight risk region. I'm sorry I haven't noticed that until now or mentioned it until now, but if you live in the affected areas, definitely say weather alert as of right now. As of by the time this video comes out, this tornado watch should still be out. And again, conditions are favorable for tornadic development as of right now. So we could definitely see some tornadic development with this tornado watch. So definitely stay weather alert if you live in this tornado watch region. But then if we go back to our 2 points, you see that we are expected to see a little bit of a dry line develop across Nebraska and western Kansas. So that will aid in severe thunderstorm development with the lead troughing that we have, if not trigger severe thunderstorm development, because it is a boundary. However, dew points for this slight risk region are going to be ranging anywhere from the mid and upper 60s, possibly getting into the 70s across some parts of Kansas and Oklahoma, where we have a very large marginal threat. So we could definitely see tons of moisture and instability for this marginal threat to support the threat of some less organized severe thunderstorms outside of these slight risk regions. However, in the slight risk region for Nebraska and Kansas, we could definitely see some fairly strong instability in this slight risk region. And then if we take a look at the slight risk region for Oklahoma and Texas, we are expected to see a little bit stronger moisture and potentially a little bit stronger instability across this region as well. Because of our stronger moisture, we have had a little bit, we've had rounds of severe thunderstorms and rain showers for Oklahoma and northern Texas. So we are expected to see building instability as well as this southerly flow, and again the rounds of convection that we've had across Oklahoma and Texas, that is going to lead to a little bit stronger moisture across Oklahoma, which will lead to overall stronger instability. Taking a look at our temperatures, let's primarily focus on where the trough is currently situated across the Pacific Northwest. This trough is expected to bring much colder air to the Pacific Northwest across the Rockies in the northwestern United States. We are expected to see much colder temperatures. Currently, we are looking at daytime temperatures that are going to be getting into the 30s and 40s across the Rocky Mountains, and a large portion of where this trough is affecting. But then if we go into nighttime, we are expected to see very, very cold temperatures, especially at night. We are expected to see temperatures that could get to freezing in some regions, and that is currently why we do have this winter weather advisory for parts of Montana and Idaho, is because of these very, very cold temperatures from this trough across Montana and Idaho, being able to support some winter weather across the winter weather advisory region. So do keep that in mind if you do live in that region. But we are expected to see much colder temperatures across the Pacific Northwest because of this drop. And again, we are currently in meteorological fall, so we should start seeing much colder temperatures. This isn't anything new this time of year. This is expected in this time of year, as we again are in meteorological fall. So we should see much colder temperatures beginning to impinge on the United States as we get closer into the fall season. Taking a look at our instability, focusing on the very large marginal threat in our two slight risk regions, let's focus on the slight risk region for Nebraska and Kansas. You may notice that we do have a tornado warning that has been issued for southern Nebraska, southern Nebraska. This just goes to show with our tornado watch that conditions are definitely favorable for tornadic development across this region. This tornado warning may not still be there by the time I release this video, so I'm not gonna go into too much detail about that specific tornado warning, as this is a forecast video. But again, this tornado warning does go to show that conditions are favorable for tornadic development across this 5% tornado threat region. So if we take a look at our instability, we are expected to see Cape values are going to be getting as high as the upper 2000s as well as the low 3000s in some regions, which will definitely fuel and support the threat of our 5% tornado threat, the threat of damaging winds, and the threat of large to very large hail across this slight risk region with our Lee troughing and our orographic elongated hodographs and some of the veering of the winds that we have. We could definitely see, again, the threat of that 5% tornado threat. We could see a few tornadoes across this region, as well as the threat of large to very large hail and the threat of damaging winds for this slight risk region. But then if we take a look at the slight risk region for Oklahoma and Texas, you can see that we do have some fairly strong instability here as well. We are expected to see Cape values are going to be fairly similar. However, they are going to be ranging anywhere from the 2000s range into the 3000s range in some regions. We aren't expected to see as strong instability. However, we could definitely still see some fairly strong instability across this region, and instability that would still be supportive of our 15% wind and our 15% hail threat, as well as the threat of 1 or 2 brief tornadoes, with some of the veering of the winds that we have and our directional shear. Taking a look at our energy helicity index, let's focus on our 5% tornado threat, our tornado watch, and our 1 tornado warning region. You can see that we are expected to have fairly strong and widespread energy helicity index readings for this 5% tornado threat. We are expected to see energy helicity index readings that are going to be getting as high as some values in the 10 in this one specific region. I'm not sure how accurate that is. That may be a little bit of contamination because it's such a small area. However, we are expected to see widespread energy helicity index regions or readings get as high as the 6s, the 7s, and even the 5s. So we are definitely expected to see widespread energy helicity index readings to support and be indicative of this 5% tornado threat, and will definitely support the threat of a few tornadoes for this 5% tornado threat. Then if we take a look at the 2% tornado threat for Oklahoma and Texas, you can see that we don't really have as strong energy helicity index readings. However, you can see that we do have enough energy helicity index readings that would definitely be indicative and supportive of this 2% tornado threat, and support the threat of 1 or 2 brief tornadoes across this region. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator and join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. If you live in any of the areas that I covered for today, please stay weather alert for the time being, and hopefully I will be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.